Next time you open your refrigerator, you might see a carton of eggs on one shelf. On another, there may be a package of chicken. Both come from domestic chickens. But the eggs and the meat usually come from two very different breeding lines. One line was bred to lay as many eggs as possible. The other was bred to put on as much meat as possible in the shortest amount of time. Then there is a third group. For decades, hardly anyone talked about them. The male chicks born to egg-laying hens. They cannot lay eggs. They also grow too slowly to be profitable as meat birds. Worldwide, this affects an estimated 6 to 7 billion chicks every year. For decades, most were killed shortly after hatching. Why would anyone breed chickens that cannot be used for eggs and are not economical to raise for meat? The answer begins with the transformation of a versatile farm animal into two very different high-performance birds. The chicken is now the most common bird on Earth. At any given time, more than 20 billion chickens are alive worldwide. Chickens and other farmed poultry make up a large share of all bird biomass on the planet. By comparison, the combined mass of every wild bird is surprisingly small. But our relationship with chickens probably did not begin because people wanted meat or eggs. In 2022, an international team published a study on chicken domestication. Archaeologists Joris Peters and Naomi Sykes led the research. Their findings suggest that chicken domestication began about 3,500 years ago in Southeast Asia. Dry rice farming probably played an important role. People had begun growing rice in open fields rather than flooded paddies. Those fields offered easy food to red junglefowl, the wild ancestors of modern chickens. The birds began leaving the forest more often to feed in the fields. That brought them into regular contact with human settlements. Over time, that repeated contact developed into a lasting relationship between humans and chickens. When chickens later reached Europe, people did not immediately treat them as ordinary livestock. At several Iron Age sites in Britain, archaeologists found complete chicken skeletons. The bones showed no clear signs of slaughter or butchering. Some chickens had been carefully buried. A few were even placed in graves alongside people. That suggests chickens had religious or symbolic value in certain communities. They may have been used in rituals, cockfighting, or attempts to predict the future. The Romans also watched chickens for signs from the gods. Military commanders brought sacred chickens on campaigns. Before a battle, priests observed whether the birds would eat. If they ate eagerly, that could be taken as a good sign. If they refused their food, it could be read as a warning. According to one famous ancient account, the sacred chickens of a Roman naval commander refused to eat. He had them thrown into the sea. His response roughly meant, if they won't eat, then let them drink. He went on to lose the battle. It took a long time for chicken to become an ordinary meat in Europe. When it finally did, male birds were not unwanted. Some were especially prized. In 161 BC, Rome passed a law called the Lex Faunia. It was meant to curb extravagant banquets. Among other restrictions, a host could serve only one hen, and it could not be specially fattened. Roman breeders appear to have found a loophole. The law mentioned hens, but it said nothing about roosters, so people castrated young roosters and fattened them instead. A castrated rooster is called a capon. Castration changes the way the bird grows. A capon becomes heavier and puts on more fat. Its meat also becomes more tender. For centuries, capons were considered premium food for European feasts. On a traditional farm, the system was straightforward. A hen laid eggs for several years. When her egg production dropped, she became a stewing hen. Young roosters were raised for a few months and then eaten. The same kind of chicken provided both eggs and meat. Today, we call these dual-purpose breeds. They laid fewer eggs than modern laying hens. They also grew more slowly than modern meat chickens, but farmers could use both the females and the males. That kind of all-purpose bird was not efficient enough for industrial agriculture. In 1945, Howard Pierce proposed a nationwide breeding competition. Pierce was the poultry research director for the American grocery chain AANDP. The goal was to produce a chicken that grew faster and carried more meat. It also had to use as little feed as possible. The contest was called the Chicken of Tomorrow. Breeders from across the United States submitted hatching eggs. The chicks were raised under comparable conditions. Experts measured how quickly they grew and how broad their breasts became. They also measured meat yield and feed use. The national finals took place in Delaware in 1948. A cross developed by California breeder Charles Vantris stood out for its broad body. The birds also grew unusually fast. A white feathered line developed by Henry Saglio performed well too. Its pale feathers left fewer dark pin feathers behind after processing. That made the finished chicken more appealing to shoppers. Both lines had a major influence on the development of modern meat chickens. The contest sped up a change that pushed the chicken in two separate commercial directions. On one side was the broiler, a chicken bred for meat. It needed to grow quickly and develop a large amount of muscle. On the other side was the laying hen. She needed to produce as many eggs as possible while eating relatively little feed. In 1925, a meat chicken needed about 16 weeks to reach 2.5 pounds. A modern broiler can weigh close to 6 pounds in less than 7 weeks. It also needs far less feed for each pound of weight it gains. That rapid growth comes with physical costs. Some birds have trouble supporting their body weight on their legs. Fast growth can also put stress on the heart and circulatory system. Egg-laying breeds moved in the opposite direction. A wild red junglefowl hen might lay 10 to 15 eggs in a year. A modern commercial hen can lay more than 300. She does not need a heavy frame or large breast muscles. She stays light and carries far less meat than a broiler. That created a problem traditional farms had never faced in quite the same way. About half the chicks born into an egg-laying line are male. Those birds obviously cannot lay eggs, but they are not well suited for meat production either. A male chick from an egg-laying line has the same light body type as his sisters. He grows slowly and remains relatively lean. A broiler reaches slaughter weight in 6 or 7 weeks. A male from an egg-laying line would need to be fed for several months. Even then, he would produce much less meat. For an industrial producer, the math does not work. Feeding the bird costs more than its meat will bring in. Hatcheries therefore sorted the chicks by sex immediately after they hatched. Trained workers could identify males and females when the chicks were only 1 day old. The female chicks were raised to become laying hens. The males were removed and killed. Depending on the country and the hatchery, this was done with carbon dioxide or high-speed mechanical equipment. The practice is known as chick culling. Many consumers learned what was happening inside hatcheries only after the issue became the subject of public debate. But the original question is slightly misleading. We eat male chickens all the time. Commercial broiler farms raise both males and females. Roughly half the birds are male. Male broilers often grow a little faster. They also tend to become heavier than the females. So when you buy chicken breast at an American grocery store, that meat could easily have come from a male bird. The word chicken on the package does not tell you whether the bird was male or female. A more precise question would be, why don't we eat the male chicks born to laying hens? Their breeding line is what makes the difference. A male broiler grows quickly and can be raised for meat. A male from an egg-laying line grows slowly and will never produce eggs. Specialization gave both industries highly productive birds. It also created a group of animals that had little economic value within either system. An experiment by geneticist William Muir showed how breeding for one narrow goal can produce unexpected results. Muir worked at Purdue University in the 1990s. He compared two ways of breeding more productive laying hens. In the first group, he chose the hen with the highest egg production from each cage. He then bred their descendants over several generations. The birds became increasingly aggressive. By the sixth generation, they had attacked and injured one another so badly that most were dead. Some of the highest producing hens had laid more eggs because they bullied the other birds in the cage. Muir had selected for high egg production. Without intending to, he had also selected for aggression. His second method focused on the productivity of the entire cage rather than one individual hen. He bred the birds from the most productive groups. Those chickens got along better and produced far more eggs together. The experiment showed what can happen when breeding rewards a single number. The target improves, but the unwanted effects may appear somewhere else. For laying hens, the main target was the number of eggs produced. Male chicks did not contribute to that target. The result was a bird that had almost no economic use in a specialized egg industry. Researchers now try to solve the problem before the chick hatches. One approach is called in ovo sexing. It identifies whether an egg contains a male or female embryo during incubation. Eggs containing male embryos can then be removed before the chicks hatch. Maria Elisabeth Krautwald-Junghans and her team at the University of Leipzig worked on several of these methods. Some techniques examine the egg with light, others remove a tiny fluid sample or measure specific hormones. Hatcheries can now use versions of this technology outside the laboratory. On January 1st, 2022, Germany banned the killing of newly hatched chicks solely because they were male. France later introduced a similar ban. German egg producers now use several approaches. Some determine the sex while the embryo is still inside the egg. Others raise the males through programs often called brother-rooster programs. These roosters take longer to grow and require more feed than standard broilers. Some German egg cartons identify which method the producer uses. Others state that the brothers of the laying hens were also raised. A research project in Israel has tested another approach. A team led by Yuval Cinnamon at the Volcani Institute developed a hen named Golda. She carries a genetic change that affects only male embryos. When the eggs are exposed to blue light, the male embryos stop developing. The female embryos develop normally. They do not carry the genetic change. This is a specialized technology, not a standard method used throughout the industry. About 2,000 years ago, people castrated young roosters. That allowed them to fatten the birds while working around a Roman banquet law. Today, researchers use light, hormone tests, and other methods to identify the sex of a chicken embryo. Whether a male chicken became a prized feast or an unwanted byproduct never depended on the bird alone. It depended on what people wanted that particular breeding line to do. In 2018, a research team led by Karis Bennett published a study in the journal Royal Society Open Science. The researchers proposed the modern broiler chicken as a possible biological marker of humanity's impact on the planet. Their argument was based partly on the sheer number of broilers. The birds' unusual bodies also mattered. Their bones are noticeably different from those of earlier chickens. Modern broilers grow faster and become much larger. Their body proportions have changed as well. Around the world, their bones end up in layers of human waste. A geologist in the distant future could uncover the remains of this unusual animal. Its body could not have existed without intensive human breeding. So the next time you see eggs and chicken meat in your refrigerator, you are not simply looking at two products from one type of farm animal. The eggs usually come from a lightweight laying line. The meat usually comes from a fast-growing broiler line. Between them are the male chicks born to laying hens. For decades, a highly specialized industry had almost no use for them. We do eat male chickens. The birds we rarely used were the brothers of the laying hens.